Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth podcast. I'm your host, Wade Borth, and in every episode, my goal is to get you to think differently about how money works and ultimately to empower you to take control of your money and your personal financing system.
So today, let's talk real briefly about a thing that most people don't want to talk about. And that's long-term care and the need for long-term care or some sort of extended medical coverage in the event of as we get older, things are going to happen to us. And gosh, this is such a tough conversation for a lot of people to have. And a lot of it extends around is that we don't think about it until we actually need these type of coverage. And what we're talking about is what most people refer to as nursing home insurance. Now, that's a bit of a misclassification of what it actually is, because a lot of the policies today, especially the ones that we look at and the ones we implement, do much more than just long-term care facilities, right? So it covers, there was a question asked, if you would want to receive care, extended care, where would you want to receive it? And most people say they'd want to receive it at home. And so that's where we have to make sure that when we're talking about this taboo subject of long-term care policies, we're not just talking about large facilities, nursing homes, but we're talking about need for medical services. And it doesn't even have to be in our later years in our life, but that's typically where it happens. And so if you could receive it at home, why not get it at home? If you had to go to a place or receive it at a place where you can, leave your home but not go into a full-blown facility, let's get it there. And in the event if you do need it in a full-blown facility in a traditional nursing home setting, why not have coverage showing there? And so today we're going to talk about not all long-term care insurance is equal, because some of them out there do not cover all those areas of care. And so again, going back to what we're talking about with long-term care is that there's statistics out there that one out of two of us are eventually going to need some sort of long-term care in our future, especially if you're married. And so the need is definitely there, but I don't want to use that as a scare tactic, because I see so many people talking about, well, you're going to need this, you're going to need this. But let's talk about the why. Why would you want this versus do you need it? You don't need anything. You need air, you need food, I guess, but that's about the only needs that you have. But the question is why? Why do you want this type of care? And so what we want to do is we want to preserve our lives to the fullest ability as we can and have the most fulfilling life as we possibly can for as long as we want to be here. At least that's my intent, and that's my thought process. And so if we can provide something to help you live that fullest life, that's really what we're here to talk about. But there are three interesting reasons why people don't buy long-term care policies. The first one is, I don't need it. And so if we think about that, again, we don't need it, but the question is, why do we want it? Do we want to use all our assets to pay for something that we're going to fight tooth and nail to stay out of? I would agree with that. Probably what you're going to want to do. But the other side of the equation is, I don't need it should be, why do I want it? And if I can answer that question, then should we not be having a further discussion around that? And the why do I want it is, why not take a small portion of your assets to cover that potential need that you might have, that potential event that you might have. The second is, if I don't use it, I'm just wasting my money. Completely agree. This is where there's a differentiating between a lot of different long-term care policies. And this is why not all long-term care policies are equal. Because there are some that says if you don't use it, somebody will get that benefit back in the form of a death benefit or, dollars back to you or your beneficiaries. So if you don't use it, it's not lost. It's not like homeowner insurance where if you don't have a house burned down, that money's lost and gone forever. It's the exact opposite of that. Now, there are some policies that will do that will take your money. If you never need it, you don't see a dime back. But let's not look at those. Let's not look at the ones that can give you those dollars back if you indeed never use the money. And one that's been big, and it's been a big topic of conversation, is if the rates rise, I won't be able to afford it. And man, this is so true. There's so many people that say, we started off at so many dollars per year, and every year after that, the prices got up and got to be more expensive, just to the point where I can't afford it, so I get rid of it, and then that's when they need the coverage. And that's not really what we want to address. That's not solving the problem. That's not going back to the why you want to have it. And if you want to have it and you understand the why, don't get rid of it the day before you need it. So the policies that we're using, the ones we're looking at now, have this really great feature that says once you start it, the rates will never go up. They're locked in. They're set for the rest of your life, never to go up in price. Not all policies are designed that way. There are a lot of policies that go up in price each and every year. The first ones that I sold 30 plus years ago when I first got in the business were just that. They had a set price, and for years and years and years, they never went up. And then when claims started to come in, they started to go up. And this is actually leads into a personal story that kind of addresses all three of these. My mother had purchased a policy from me when I first got in the business, a long-term care policy. And she paid the premiums, and they never went up, and they were stable, and there was never an issue. And then one day, she was driving back home, and a semi ran into her. Well, technically, she ran into the semi that pulled out in front of her. And when that happened, her life changed forever. And how it changed is that she never went back to her home ever again. She never was back in her home ever again for the rest of her life. She never saw her home. And so what happened was she needed, after an extensive stay, she needed to be in a full-blown nursing home for recovery because she had lost both her legs. So at that age, she was like, I got to learn to walk again, but she couldn't do it on her own. So she had to go to a nursing home. And so that cost was about $7,000 a month. So if you think about it, and this was a lot of years ago, $7,000 a month was the cost. Did she need it the day before she got in that accident? Absolutely not. Did she want it? She wanted it 15 years before that. And we sold it to her 15 years before she actually needed it. So don't wait until you need something in order to buy it. Get it because you want it, because you know that you want to have that coverage. You know you have assets that you want to protect. So you want to set aside a portion of those assets in order to protect the larger body of those. And then she was in a nursing home for a year and a half. And then when she got out, she needed some additional care. And so the policy that she had actually went from being a nursing home insurance to being assisted living. So she needed some help. And for the most part, she was on her own. So it covered her, in that position as well, because she had additional cost, right? It wasn't just going and getting an apartment and being fine. She had additional cost. She had to have nurses come over and so on and so forth. But in the meantime, something interesting happened. Again, this was one of the very first policies I sold, and this was back in the early 90s. But then she got a notice from the company that she had the policy with, that her premiums are going to go up 40%. And she's like, Wade, what do I do with this? I said, well, Mom, I said, you got more out of this policy than you're ever going to pay into it after a year and a half of $7,000 a month in expenses. I said, so pay the premium, pay the increase in premium. So she did. Then something interesting happened was that she was kind of living on her own. She'd actually got off claim and she was just really living on her own, and she fell and she broke her hip again. So she had to go back into the nursing home. And so she went to the nursing home and paid that claim as well, $6,000 a month. And then $6,000 a month was being paid. She got out of the nursing home. She had to go back to assisted living. So she went back to assisted living. She's living on her own. She says, hey, she had more sand and grit than anybody I know. She says, I don't need to walk again, but I'll extend my wheelchair as long as I don't have to go back to the nursing home. So she's on assisted living. And so she was doing just fine. It was paying for the assisted living as well. And then she got a notice that, hey, your premiums are going to go up another 50%. And she says, what do I do with that? I said, I'll tell you what, I'll pay for it, because I couldn't buy the security that policy was buying me as being the youngest son trying to help her along as well, because I was there trying to give her aid, trying to help her. If the policy wasn't there, I would have had to put my life on hold in order to make that happen. So going back to the why we bought it was so we wouldn't have to do that. So the premium that was being paid, even though the price went up, I was willing to pay it. What I learned from that is find a policy that doesn't have that ability to go up in price, because these come at the most inappropriate times or unfortunate times. These price increases they just set my mother for a loop, and it was difficult for her. So again, I learned my lesson there is let's find policies that do not go up in price. Let's find why you want to get it. Let's have it so it covers all three aspects, right? The assisted living, the home health care, the full-blown nursing home, because you never know when you're going to need it. You'll not need it one day, and it could turn out that you absolutely need it the next. So for my personal story, I have a real passionate about having people learn and understand this, and not waiting until the very end when they say, oh, I really want this now, when it's too late. Because again, when you want it to be able to keep your family together, to not put burden and strain on your children or your grandchildren to take care of you, why you're going to want this. You're going to want this because if you have it, you'll use it. If you don't have it, what I've seen with clients is that don't have this coverage, they'll do everything they can on their own, which is basically they'll not have the extra care. They're so afraid to spend that money to receive care at home that they'll wait too long, and then they're forced into a nursing home. Where if you had the coverage, maybe you'd stay at home a lot longer, and then you'd go to the assisted living, and then you go to the nursing home. But when you don't have the coverage, you don't have the ability to pay for it. Even if you do have the ability to pay for it, you don't want to use your own money. Let's use the insurance company's money to pay for those, to make sure we stay healthy and stay out of this. So I would just encourage you that if this story reaches you at all, touches you at all, give me a call. Let's have a conversation about what this can do for you, why you want to have this, how can you fit this into your financial picture, because it's such a valuable tool as you go along. And as things change in life, they now become a lot more important. Because if you're not doing it for yourself, think about your family and those ones that are going to want to take care of you as you get older. Let's have professionals do that for us. Let's pay professionals to do that for us. And that will give you that peace of mind that you're looking for.
If you're enjoying this podcast or know anyone else that might be interested, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and please leave a review. This will help this podcast reach and help more people by ranking higher in searches, and ultimately help more people get out of financial bondage. And don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends and family, as we can be easily found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.